We begin in Lewis County, where ongoing controversy surrounds a candidate for sheriff. This is the campaign website for Tracy Murphy. The recently fired Centralia police officer will stay in the race despite a state investigation that led to his dismissal. The Daily Chronicle has been covering this story from the very beginning. We're joined by Jacob Farmer from the Chronicle Now. Thank you for being here, Jacob.
Thank you for having me.
So for people who may not be familiar with Murphy, can you tell us a little bit about him and when this all started?
Yes, so Sergeant Tracy Murphy was a longtime Centralia Police Department sergeant. He had roughly a 30-year career with the Centralia Police Department, and by all accounts had a very exemplary career. He's actually a local Centralia product, and even before he became a Centralia Police Department officer, he was even a teen cadet. So this is a guy that's well rooted in the community. This is a guy that is generally well liked, and he's actively running for sheriff, like you said.
Tell us what's the conflict here. When did this investigation initially kick off, and why?
Yeah, so this started with an anonymous CJTC complaint, and that stands for the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission. And in this anonymous complaint, the complainant essentially alleged that Murphy had made repeated statements claiming that our current sheriff, Rob Snaza, had either acquired or protected drug dealers and distributing specifically cocaine to some prominent Lewis County Republicans. Now, the complainant issued this complaint for two primary reasons. One, either Murphy was knowingly spreading false information for political purposes, or otherwise the information had some basis in fact, but Murphy was improperly disclosing that information outside of the department, again, for possible political reasons. So initially, Police Chief Andy Caldwell decided that he wasn't going to pursue his own formal investigation, essentially punting it back to the CJTC. However, in the wake of our coverage, Caldwell heard from some people essentially telling him that he should, in fact, investigate. So the Centralia Police Department conducted its own internal investigation. Now, the interesting thing about this is that investigation itself ultimately could not sustain the original allegations. However, during the course of the investigation, the investigator and then Caldwell concluded that Murphy had omitted material information or made false or misleading statements during the internal investigation, and that's what ultimately led to his firing. So it's a bit of a many step sort of thing that's led to this, but that's essentially it in a nutshell.
And what were the state agency's findings?
So here's the thing. So the Criminal Justice Training Commission, that complaint is still in the process. It's still in what's called the intake review stage. They have yet to decide whether they are going to pursue their own investigation. And now that investigation could lead to potential decertification, but we're still, sort of a ways away from that. So the firing is sort of separate from the investigation, even though the CJTC complaint led to it.
And from your reporting, what does Tracy Murphy have to say amid this investigation and his subsequent firing?
Right. So when the complaint was first made and the Tracy Murphy campaign, actually they were, I think, the first people to speak on it publicly. They alleged and basically insinuated that it was politically motivated. And, that calls into question, if in fact that's true. But Murphy has maintained and has said to me that he intends to fight the firing through the appropriate legal channels with his union. So this is something that's, I think, going to be ongoing for some time.
Well, and finally, what are the chances Murphy could be Lewis County's next sheriff? Is he a prominent candidate right now?
Yeah, so Murphy ran in 2022. He ran against Rob Snaza, and that preceded me, but I've been told that was a highly contested race. He did end up losing in that race, but he's one could argue he's the most prominent candidate. One could argue he has the most exposure right now, and there's nothing currently that would prohibit him from running, even if he were to be, let's say, decertified by the CJTC. Now, I know there is sort of legislation that's in the works that could strengthen those requirements for an elected sheriff. Mm-hmm. But as of now, there's nothing that would, as far as my understanding, could stop him from running.
Well, Jacob, we'll keep an eye on this, and thank you for your reporting.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.